I also have some questions about Trump voters and exactly where they are with Donald Trump. I mean, obviously there are the very, very, very diehard who will be with him till the end, but there are a lot of others who I wonder if they're just overloaded with Donald Trump and all that he brings to the table. Let's bring in Politics Bureau Chief and Senior Political Columnist for Politico, Jonathan Martin. Jonathan, in your new piece for Politico magazine, you ask if the anti-Trump GOP forces are starting to implode. And you write, quote, for months, high-level Republican lawmakers, donors, and strategists eager to block Trump have described in separate conversations with me an endgame to the presidential primary. When it becomes clear in the early state and national polling who is consolidating support, the most influential figures with ties to the lagging candidates will stage a sort of political intervention and tell them it's time to quit and rally to the strongest alternative to Trump. Such a plot always struck me as a bit far-fetched. Yet the appetite among elite Republicans to move past Trump was and is so immense, I thought there could be at least a do the right thing effort. Yet as spring turns to summer, this vision seems more fantasy than strategy. In fact, if Trump does emerge as the GOP standard bearer next year, we will look back on this week to grasp why, just like in 2016, he was able to take advantage of a divided opposition. Jonathan, I think you're right. I mean, look, we saw him come down the escalator, and there were those who were like, don't discount this person. You can never discount Donald Trump. But he is looking at several indictments, possibly. One, some would say, probably. And that one, I'm talking about the documents one, is pretty damn serious.
Right. Well, thanks for having me. Look, I think the challenge today is more clear than ever when it comes to Donald Trump, and it's less Donald Trump than it is the opposition, which is not unified around a single candidate. Yes, it's still early. Yes, it's not even yet June. There's plenty of time, and there are doubts about Donald Trump in the party rank and file and his viability in a general election. But we've seen the movie before, Mika. We know how he got the nomination in 2016, and it is damn hard to get politicians to put the party over themselves and to drop out and cede the nomination, or at least the kind of baton to try to challenge Trump to somebody else. And I think that's really the issue here, is how do you consolidate at the end of this year to a 2 or 3 person field and narrow this thing down? Because we know in the era of super PACs, guys, that every one of these candidates is not going to want to drop out, going to want to keep going and try to, give it the absolute best shot they have until they withdraw and back somebody else. And then how do you prevent Trump, guys, from cutting a deal with some of these lagging candidates in which he says, you stay in until I tell you to get out, keep carving up the opposition, and then, I'll pay you off with some kind of a reward when the time comes for you to drop out of the race and I get the nomination. So, there's a number of factors that make this difficult to get coalescence against Trump within the GOP primary field.
So, Jonathan, as you say, and talking to people in the Trump camp, they welcome all these newcomers to the fray. There's a reason Donald Trump all but threw rose petals at the feet of Tim Scott and Nikki Haley when they got into the race. Let's keep carving up Asa Hutchinson. Come on in. Let's keep carving up the anti-Trump vote. So my question to you, though, Jonathan, is why has the anti-Trump message, at least so far, and we're talking about what Ron DeSantis might do in Iowa, been so meek? If you're really running against the guy, I understand his base of support is strong and they feel they need those votes. But if you really want to beat him, don't you have to go at him a little harder than any of these candidates has?
Yeah. Well, you just touched on what may actually be the biggest challenge within the Republican primary field to dethrone Trump, and that is they almost have to confront him in ways that are not direct. And the reason for that, and the reason that there's this trepidation about taking him on head on, is because they fear that if they do that, their voters will either recoil or ignore their message, because for 6-7 years, their voters have absorbed attacks against Trump, mostly from Democrats, and largely they're inured to those attacks. So these Republicans, you talk to them and they say, we've got to make a case on electability against him. We have to get to his right. To just stand there and say Donald Trump is a lying demagogue who would shred the Constitution just doesn't work with their voters. There's an old saying, Willie, you go to war with the army, you have not the army you want. And I think this is the challenge with Republicans. It's the voters. They're having to accommodate an electorate that not only is conservative, but that largely does not want to hear frontal attacks on Donald Trump. So you have to be creative about it.
And Mika, to the point about the growing field, Maggie Haberman of the New York Times is just reporting that Chris Christie starting a new super PAC, expected to get into the race within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And Amy Walter has a new piece in the Cook Political Report entitled, "Can Republicans Hope to Outrun Trump in 2024 House Races?" She writes in part this: one way to look at the potential impact of a Trump-led GOP ticket is to compare GOP down-ballot performance in key swing districts to Trump's showing in those same districts in the 3 election cycles where he's either been on the ballot or in the White House. To hold the House, Republicans are going to need to beat Democrats in districts where Trump will likely lose. In 2016, when Trump was a novelty, 23 Republican candidates won districts Trump lost. 4 years later, only 9 Republicans were able to do the same thing. In 2022, Democrats effectively branded the GOP as the party of MAGA and Trump, helping them to pick up a Senate seat and hold down their losses in the House. This is why many Republicans are correctly worried that Trump on the top of the ticket could risk their majority. And I wouldn't disagree with that, Gene. I wonder, are we all watching the same movie?
Yeah, I think we're watching the sequel, which is really kind of like the original. My question is, everybody can see this, right? Everybody can see those results that Amy came out with. And so who, my question to Jonathan is, who are these Republicans who are going to strategize this and somehow make this happen? Who is the Republican establishment now?
No, it's a fair question, Gene. There's no question about it. It's a very weakened force because of what's happened in the last 7 years and Trump's effective takeover of the party. But there is still a traditional, party establishment, governors, former governors, senators, donors, strategists who desperately want to move on from Trump, who want to find a vessel that they can use to move on from Trump. And I think that's the frustration is there was some hope after the midterms that, well, DeSantis is not ideal, but he clearly is going to be the best bet for us to move on from Trump. And now is that vessel taking on water? And is there going to have to be a sort of reassessment of DeSantis? And that's why I thought Tim Scott's entry was notable, in part because he had the blessing of somebody like John Thune, the second-ranking Senate Republican, a card-carrying member of the Republican establishment. I thought Thune's presence there sent a signal that Scott is okay with the Republican establishment. But if that's the case, again, then you risk going forward to 24, fracturing the vote once more and giving Trump a lane to win the nomination with less than a majority because he's running against, divided field. So the question is, at the end of this year, start of next year, will these candidates hear enough from donors and yes, some party officials and feel pressure to get out of the race so that one person can take on Trump? Look, I think that's a big ask. Especially in a year which doesn't look kindly on smoke-filled rooms. But the message is going to be, Gene, if you want to beat Trump, if you want to consolidate and stop him now, you got to get out now. And you got to rally behind candidate X, who's going to be the strongest alternative. And we'll see if that carries the day at the end of this year.
All right, Politics Bureau Chief for Politico, Jonathan Martin, thank you very much for being on this morning. We appreciate it.